Today, we are diving into a really big idea, one that completely changed the conversation around what it means to be smart. It's Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences.
So let me just ask you, right off the bat, are you smart? It sounds like a simple yes or no question, right? You probably start thinking about, your grades in school, test scores, that kind of thing.
But what if that whole way of thinking is just too small? What if being smart isn't this single thing you either have or you don't, but like a whole spectrum of different talents and abilities? That's really the heart of what we're digging into today.
You see, for the longest time, the main tool we had was the IQ test. And the whole idea behind it was that you could basically boil down a person's intelligence to one single number. But as you can imagine, that approach has some pretty big limitations. And this is where the psychologist Howard Gardner steps onto the scene. Back in 1983, in his book Frames of Mind, he threw out this pretty radical idea. He said, wait a minute, intelligence isn't just one thing. It's a collection of different distinct abilities. And he argued that our traditional tests just don't see the whole picture.
So Gardner came up with this list of 8 distinct intelligences. The theory is that all of us have these to some degree, but we usually have a few where we really shine. So, you ready? Let's walk through them.
First up, we've got visual spatial intelligence. These are the people who think in pictures. They're amazing with maps, they love putting together puzzles, and they can see patterns that the rest of us might miss. It makes total sense that you find them in careers like architecture, art, or engineering.
Next is linguistic verbal intelligence. This is all about words. If you're someone who just loves to read, you've got a talent for telling a great story, or you can craft a really persuasive argument, this might be you. We're talking about the intelligence of writers, journalists, lawyers, and great teachers.
Number 3 is logical mathematical intelligence. Now, this is the one we probably think of when we hear the term book smart. It's that ability to use reason, to analyze problems, and to think in a really abstract way about numbers and scientific questions. This is the world of scientists, mathematicians, and programmers. But Gardner's theory also takes smart way beyond the classroom into the physical world with bodily kinesthetic intelligence. This is all about an incredible connection between mind and body, amazing motor control and physical skill. Dancers, surgeons, actors, craftspeople, they all have this. They learn and remember by doing, not just by reading or listening.
Okay, moving on to number 5, musical intelligence. This is for people who kind of think in rhythms, melodies, and sounds. They have this deep ability to hear and create patterns in music. It's the intelligence of a composer, a singer, a conductor, a true musician.
Number 6 is interpersonal intelligence. You might call this people smarts. It's the ability to really understand and connect with other people. These are folks who are great at reading body language and emotions, at communicating, and at helping resolve conflicts. Think psychologists, salespeople, and politicians.
And the flip side of that is intrapersonal intelligence. So if interpersonal is about looking outward, intrapersonal is about looking inward. People strong in this have a deep understanding of themselves. They're self-aware, they enjoy thinking about big theories, and they really know their own motivations. This is the domain of philosophers and theorists.
And finally, the 8th one, which Gardner actually added to the theory a bit later, is naturalistic intelligence. This is about being deeply in tune with the natural world, being able to find and recognize patterns in nature. This is the intelligence of a biologist, a gardener, or a farmer.
But you know what? He didn't necessarily stop there. Gardner has also talked about a potential 9th intelligence, one that gets into some of the absolute biggest questions we ask ourselves.
He calls it existential intelligence. This is that ability to tackle the really deep philosophical questions about human existence, like the meaning of life, why we're here, why we die. It's the kind of intelligence you might find in a philosopher or a theologian.
Now, when you hear all this, it's easy to see why the theory is so incredibly popular, right? Especially in schools. It feels so much more inclusive and positive. But there's a pretty big twist in this story.
The big question is, does the science actually back it up? Well, this is where things get really complicated.
In fact, many in the scientific community have major problems with it. One journal article from just last year went so far as to call it a neuromyth, and what that means is it's basically an unscientific claim about how the brain works that a lot of people just accept as fact, even though there's no real evidence for it.
So the criticisms really boil down to a few things.
First, a lot of scientists say Gardner's definition of intelligence is just way too broad. They would argue that things like musical skill or physical coordination are better called talents or abilities, not an entire form of intelligence. And the biggest critique of all, the theory just doesn't have strong, peer-reviewed research to back it up. So that leaves us with this huge question. If the scientific proof really isn't there, then why on earth is this theory still so incredibly popular in schools and education? Well, part of the issue is that it often gets mashed together with another idea, learning styles. Gardner himself has actually warned people not to do this. See, his theory is about the different kinds of abilities people might have. It's not about the idea that people learn best if you only teach them in one specific way, like visually or by listening, which, by the way, is an idea that has been pretty thoroughly disproven by research. And this is really the bottom line from all the studies. The evidence is overwhelming that trying to match your teaching method to a student's supposed intelligence type or learning style just doesn't work. It has no real benefit for how much they learn. So, we're left with this fascinating puzzle, aren't we? We have a theory that doesn't hold up to scientific scrutiny, but at the same time, it just resonates with so many of us on a human level. And that leads to our final question for you. Even if it isn't hard science, what is the value in a way of thinking that encourages us to look beyond a single test score and to celebrate all the different incredible ways a person can be brilliant?